letting us know who you are, where you work, what you do.
Oh, sure, okay. I'm Erik Thomas. I am the Senior Group Manager of Experiential Marketing at Hyundai Motor America. That includes Hyundai and Genesis auto shows, as well as Hyundai Experiential Marketing and sponsorships. Been at Hyundai for a little past 7 years now. Been doing auto shows for a decade. First started with American Honda, where I spent 12 years on there before joining the Hyundai family.
Tyler McBride. I manage auto shows and dealer events for Toyota Motor North America. Prior to that, I'm actually brand new to the job. I joined, or I moved into this role about 2 months ago, and just working downstairs right now to get set up for tomorrow. So this is an easy one. Prior to that, I spent 3 years in what we call engagement marketing at Toyota, so managing national partnerships, a lot of event sponsorship within there, and have been at Toyota going on 7 years. Live in Plano, Texas, by choice. After thinking long and hard if I want to leave Southern California and go out, and Dallas has been great.
Nice. So it's fair to say you're an expert on your new job, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as much as an expert as most people in this industry.
So I kind of teed this up, right? So I said a bit about event marketing versus experiential marketing. So I want to ask that as the first question to you guys. Do you agree? Is event marketing now firmly called experiential marketing, or are they totally different?
Yeah, so I would say if you're calling what you do event marketing, there's probably a lot more you could be doing to make the most of that opportunity. You know, and I know my title says dealer events, so I work on events specifically dedicated to dealers, and that's just what they are events. But in terms of engagement marketing, we say engagement marketing for a reason, and that's because we don't want people to call it events. Any partnership that you do should have multiple elements to it, apart from just what's on site. So you should be looking for, well, okay, here's the partnership, here's what we'll do on site, here's what we have with regard to influencer marketing, here's what we have from a social media perspective. There's sometimes a media buy involved with it, so it really is best case scenario, like you want to have a 360 experience around that partnership.
But like, what's the difference for the consumer? I know you talked about dealers before, but like for a consumer event, like what is the difference between an experience versus an event? This is an event.
Yeah.
I would say
There's parts of it that are an experience, but it's mostly an event. But go ahead.
I would say I think that it's primarily jargon. It's us talking to us, right? At the end of the day,
we do a lot of that, don't we?
At the end of the day, it's really about, to Tyler's point, what is that experience that you're providing to consumers? And I would say the experiential element is about extending the dollar, right? So in my organization, my group competes for funds with the rest of the marketing organization, right? So how do we justify what we do? Well, we extend the event. You extend the event socially to connect with people who couldn't be there. Or you extend the event by considering what you're doing for your dealers. So at all points, you're looking at the end user, that buyer, but also how does it benefit the dealers? You're looking at everybody that's going to get something from that. At the end of the day, we're trying to move product, but in a fun way.
Right. And go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to add to that. I mean, we'd be naive to think that people go to some of these events that we sponsor to look at cars, right? Right. People don't. Toyota sponsored Lollapalooza or Stagecoach for years. And people do not go to Stagecoach. They don't say, hey, I'm going to Stagecoach this weekend. They're like, oh yeah, what are you going to see? I'm going to see, gosh, the Avalon. I'm going to see the Tundra. Right. No one says that. And and it's important to know that. If I took the display we have downstairs to Stagecoach, we'd be run out of town. I mean, it's about creating an authentic experience that's true to that experience. Right. And if it's country music, then create something that's true to Toyota and to country music, and build off of that, right?
And is there an element of like two-way communication to it, right? I mean, with the consumer, giving them a lasting experience to draw from when they're considering something, right? Which has got to be somewhat important. So, so let's talk a little bit about how it's evolved, and it's been around for a while, right? But what's sort of the difference between how you look at it today versus a couple years ago, even? Because things do move quickly, don't they?
You know, I would say, again, going back to what we were talking about, it's the additional components. How do you extend the reach of the event or the experience that you're offering? How do you get it to last? How do you basically stretch your dollar, right? So we're always looking for how do we do more with less, challenging our partners to be able to deliver that for us. And so it's really just what added component, whether it be a personality that had a following that you weren't already connecting with, or whether it's engaging with a social group in a particular way, or better yet, the sponsorship itself or the event itself that you're involved with. How does that connect you with the group of people that you weren't already talking to outside of that one event, that one day? And certainly if there's freebies along the way, that helps.
As like an ancillary to that, I'm just wondering, like, have you sensed that like the consumers' expectations of like putting on an event have changed in any way in the last couple of years? Like,
Well, you know, I think
do they want it to be awesomer every
so.
time?
Yeah.
So yes, I think there. You know, you can't bring the same thing year in, year out. Some people do, and they probably see declining results year over year, or may not. But I would assume that they do. You know, you have to work hard to make sure that each iteration is different and new. And you know, one of the great things about experiential is you can build a strategy, and then you execute that strategy, and then you can adjust and you can do the next go around. You know, on the product side, it's a lot more difficult to do that because you have these huge multi-year lead times for a product. You launch that product and you see some things work and some things that don't, and you start making those changes again, and you're waiting years. And in the case of experiential, you can make changes very quickly over a matter of days if needed.
Actually, you can make them on the minute. If
That's
you
true-
see it's
that's
not,
true, yeah.
I mean, you're there, you're watching, you're seeing how people are engaging with you. Be here at the show, or you'll be at some sponsorship event. And phrasing might be off, right? And Tyler mentioned something earlier. I think authenticity is key, right? So you want to make sure that where you're at, you're doing it in an authentic way. And if something is not resonating well with consumers, you can change it right on the spot, and you need to change it right on the spot.
So what are the main constants for you when you approach this big subject, right? Like what do you come at it with? I mean, maybe a brand identity, something like that. Like what's like the underlying sort of thing that kind of drives it along?
So ultimately, you can certainly start with measurement points, but at the end of the day, you want to know that you're going to have a positive impact on the consumer, offer them a positive experience, and also do the same for your dealers. You're thinking about your all consumers, all of your customers at the same time. What I would also say, though, to Tyler's point earlier, no one shows up to an experiential event saying, "Oh, I'm ready to buy my car." Like,
Right.
That's why I'm going to go check out your brand, right? So you want to make sure that it's memorable as well. I think one of the trends that I've seen happening through social is this thing that it has to be unique and special and allow the person to create their own memory. Like the ice cream museum or these social places where people can be a part of it, right? So I think that's a new concept that's added to it, but as long as you're thinking about how to make the event memorable so that when they come back to you or when they think about you post that event, it's positive, that's a good thing. Also, certainly initiating or making sure that you have ways to continue that dialogue, so capturing the lead gen, making sure that you put that information in to your CRM group so that you can continue that dialogue is ever critical.
Right, and so that brings up the cross-functional aspects of this, right? So you have a team that you work with, that you oversee probably, and talk about that cross-functional piece. Is that your job? Is that their job? Like, do people know what they're doing?
Well, I would say the cross-functional aspect is huge because, as I mentioned earlier, and Erik's been touching upon it as well, the different aspects that go into experiential. You really need to leverage those other teams, whether it's social media, philanthropic, some of the partnerships that you have, existing partnerships that there's crossover that could be leveraged. So it's really key that you have a team that is assertive, outgoing, always looking for ways to improve. As we mentioned earlier, there's always a better way to do something, and we should always be looking for ways to make it a better experience. It's, you know, Erik mentioned our dealers. This is one of the few areas in automotive that we, as from the manufacturer side, really have the chance to get face-to-face with the customer. You know, a lot of that, the majority of that is given to our dealers, which is through the franchise model. So we only have so much say and so much influence in terms of how that relationship goes. And as you know, if you have a bad experience at Hometown Toyota, you've had a bad Toyota experience, and that's something we have to deal with. But yeah, this is one of the few areas where you get face-to-face with the customer. So it's really what's making that memorable experience. What can you do, right?
And then you build on that and you give the dealers an understanding of where the brand is going, because you know, you send a point of sale display and you send you send your DSM out. When they can get out to the dealer, they may not have time to have sort of that brand conversation and how that comes to life. So you're giving them an understanding of, you know, where we were last year versus where we are this year, and how we're talking to the consumers about the new product. They're getting that sense and hopefully adopting some of that in their stores.
So yeah, talk about personnel, right? Where, you know, you have these teams and you have people on the floor that are working for you and are representing your brand. Dealers represent your brand. So this is all very important stuff. So the personnel question is you know, is talent, is training, like, is that a major hurdle for you guys? And is it difficult to keep like really good people? Is it what are like some of the unknowables that you know, you work with, and how do you manage them?
I would say it's definitely a major thing for us. I wouldn't call it a major challenge though. Okay. And the reason I would say that, it's something very important. Erik may disagree, but if you choose the right partners, this is what we do at the Toyota side involves many, many business partners. Right. Many business partners that we've had for many years. In some cases, some we've had for a very short time, but really trusting in them to be a steward of the brand. And that's obtaining product knowledge and understanding what matters most in terms of what's the overall strategy, what are the key message points. And if you're consistent with teaching and empowering your business partners, that major hurdle becomes less of a challenge, in my opinion.
What's the most frustrating thing about, do you have, first of all, do you have like a liaison? Like, I mean, a lot of people have an AOR or something that like handles a lot of things, but you know, do you, I guess what I'm getting at is, do you outsource the sort of relationship aspect, managing aspect of that, or is it very important to keep it very strongly in-house? That part, the sort of, you know what I mean? Or am I being confusing?
No, I don't.
Sorry, which relationship? Which piece? The
I
directing?
meant like a liaison, like a you know, an AOR can do this, I suppose, and maybe someone else I'm not aware of. But you know, managing the relationship aspect between the various parties. I mean, you guys are at the top of the chain, and you're the most important part of it. Is it more important to like outsource that so that you're kind of away from it a bit, or is it very important to be very hands-on?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Yes. I found. I'm talking to myself.
I would say that it's ever critical to have a team that you can count on. I work with some of the best people in the industry. Auto show manager is back there, Edwina Walker-Wright. If you haven't met her, please introduce yourself. She heads up both Hyundai and Genesis auto show programs. But in as much as she is running that, I think it's ever critical for me to be hands-on as well as much as I can be, because especially when it comes to events, you have to be at the spot. You have to be there to see how the consumers are digesting this plan that you had that was going to be amazing. And if it doesn't resonate, then you have to be able to react. Yeah. So, and I do think it's one of the only areas that you can really understand how consumers are engaging by going there. You have to be there to see them engaging. So,
I think a good way to add to what I completely agree with what Erik just said, and to add to that, I think a good way to answer your question too, Ross, is to give you an example. So Toyota's been a partner with bass fishing, the Bass Fishing League, for, gosh, I think 14 plus years now, almost 15 years. And so from my perspective, when I was in that role, again, I'm speaking 2 months ago instead of right now, but relationships are key, right? So I'm continually in contact with bass management, making sure that both sides are solid, that we're achieving what we want to achieve. You know, never discussing contract. That's a a bad sign of a relationship. If you're discussing deal points and what it says in the contract, then that relationship probably went south 6 months before that discussion, right? So it is key to have those conversations. But as a quick example to that, like I'll have someone from my team who handles the day-to-day. We entrust business partners that work logistically to make different events and other aspects of that partnership come to life. But I'm on site a couple BAS events a year. There's over a dozen. The person assigned from my team to manage that relationship, she's at a half dozen of those events, and then that business partner we entrust to execute all 14 of those events and those initiatives is on site. They're there, and they're talking to us daily, and it's continual conversations that take place.
Okay. So let's talk about well, measuring, right? How are you measuring your successes here in event and experiential marketing? Excuse me. What does it look like for you, and sort of where in the customer journey do you find the people that you're interacting with at these events? Those are all kind of important questions, I would imagine, for you in the back of your mind when you're sitting to folks. Right.
I would say that experiential and auto shows with respect to management and measurement are a little different, and both very complicated. For auto shows, I've been championing sort of a coming together of the brands, because I really think that the event only succeeds when we all work together along with the show manager. So then them in part working with us to deliver sort of key information from attendance to how are they marketing the event to the show? What do they need from us as OEMs? Because again, we collectively will contribute to make this a fantastic event for the consumer, right? Like they're coming for fun. There's an expectation that it'd be a little bit better than the last year, and you can't keep doing the same thing. The product will do what it needs to. We always say, once we can get you sit in the car, you'll see the difference between us and the car that's sitting next to you. I don't need to compete with you at the show. We all need to work together to get them in. Experiential, though, and sponsorship is a little different, because there's so many different factors, and it does depend on how your deal even came together. So we were talking about added value, where you may be doing kind of a different media buy, and then you're adding events on top of that. And I would contrast that with, say, sort of our relationship with the NFL, for instance. We're the sponsor, official vehicle sponsor of the NFL. And so we're looking at how each event is doing. We're looking at the lift. We're looking how we're penetrating their fan base and how our brand is resonating with them. And those measurements just they don't cross over to the auto show brand. And it's not necessarily about us working together with other brands. Rather, it's about holding them accountable for what we're looking for.
Right.
It's such a different relationship, isn't it, than an auto show? Right?
Almost definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult because auto shows versus your partnerships are apples to oranges, and then within partnerships, partnership versus partnership is apples to oranges. So
yes. It's
tough to say, to have one clear measurement across all properties. Sponsorium, I'm looking at them, they're one of the sponsors of this event. We utilize them to measure what we call return on objectives. So we put our objectives into the software, and we measure each partnership based on those objectives, and it provides us with a score of how that performs. But it's important to note
that for all the different aspects of the experiential, like
exactly.
dealer and
Yeah, we measure, we put in all of our objectives, and then we weight them, and then those scores come out, and we could see, okay, it scores high here, it scores low there. But it's just, when we say the word KPI, it's funny. You have sometimes people that have one key performance indicator, right? And then others who take the word key out of it, and they just do every measurement under the sun. And you're like, well, what's most important? It's really important to find that balance in between.
that's your job.
That's right. With Sponsorium, it's great because it gives us one of those indicators, but it's not the crystal ball of something we should be in or not. It's just one really important thing that helps us get over a little bit of this apples to oranges thing. But we look at things too, like, what's the media reach? We work with Nielsen Sports to give us a dollar value on return on these properties. We work with another company to get a social media return dollar value. So all of this stuff is taken in, and even after all that, I mean, you look at the same thing. It's still really tough to say, okay, what what is doing well and what's doing not. And usually, a lot of times, it's not what's not doing well. It's what's doing really well and what's doing just well. You know, and that's an even harder, maddening discussion to have.
Well, and then sometimes also, there's management that just doesn't even want the story.
That's
We're going to continue with this. And
Politics.
So, yeah, exactly.
That's a key performance indicator as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So talking specifically about, Tanya, how am I doing on time, by the way? Because I have like a million more questions. Oh, I only have 2 minutes. Oh, geez. All right, I got to pick and choose one.
Best question.
All right, where should we go from here? Well, I was going to ask about grassroots marketing, you know, social media, owned and earned kind of media, right? Sort of how that all fits in. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit before, but can you go in depth a little bit about sort of how important that is? And, you know, it's obviously a grassroots thing maybe in and of itself, sort of meeting these people and talking to them one-on-one and meeting the dealers, talking to them one-on-one. But, yeah, like sort of following the string after you've done that and face-to-face, sort of what does that look like? I don't even know.
You know, just quickly, it varies, and it varies. In sponsorships, you're looking at the personality, whether it's a player and what they can do for you, and sometimes it's relative to the market. I would say in auto shows, we've been able to work with different organizations to bring in, to change the shape of who's attending the audience. So, right, so women affect more than 70% of vehicle purchase, but historically have come to auto shows in 40 to 50 percentile, right? So we work with select shows to get, or to work with She Buys Cars or Girls Guide to Buying Cars to have them bring in women who have a greater influence on people who are not coming to the shows, and ultimately shape the attendees and increase that to, you know, upwards of 55% in certain shows, right? Big shows. And that's critical because that's who's affecting the purchase.
Yeah, right. And then, you know, going back to the purchase, the customer journey is a big topic for everyone, always. Will be a theme today. So how do you know where, you know, these conversations fit in and where you are, where the customer is when you're talking to them or interacting with them, you know, via other media afterwards? Is it just kind of, I guess it doesn't matter in a way, or it doesn't matter really much in a way?
Well, yeah, everyone's at a different part of that purchase funnel or customer journey, if you will. It's our job to present the product and present the brand in a way that is right for them at that moment. I mean, it's hard to make it unique, but it goes back to continuing to change the message or change how the message is positioned. Someone may be 6 months away from purchasing a vehicle, others are 6 years. So it's really about creating that right experience. I would say in experiential marketing, you are much more in the business of increasing opinion and consideration of the brand than looking to close a deal in the next few days. Right,
I try to tell that inside, but I'm always still looking at the matchbacks and showing that there's value. It depends on who I'm talking to. But yeah, I would agree that it really is an upper funnel type of decision, right? Right. But also to your point, I think that our team, we're trained to recognize anybody coming in at any point of that funnel and be able to have that conversation and or facilitate getting them to that next point, whether it's introduction to the brand or facilitation of an exchange with the dealer.
Okay, all right, right on. Thank you guys. I guess, Tanya, it's time for Q&A.
Yeah, anybody have a question on this side of the room or that side of the room? Oh,
Rob.
Rob Allen with themotorspirit.com. Nice to see you again, Erik.
You as well.
Doing well. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to put Mr. McBride on the spot, but Toyota has walked from...
Apology accepted.
Well, I'm sorry. But Toyota's walked from the Long Beach Grand Prix. Could you give some background as to what led up to that decision?
Sure. So I should start off by saying that the motorsports group is a separate group than mine, but in the spirit of cross-functional teams, it's a group we work really close with. And it's something I could speak to. For years, the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach has been one of our tentpole properties. We made the decision, the tough decision, to walk away from there because we were looking at what I was mentioning earlier of properties that are performing really well versus those that are performing well. And you know, it was a great relationship and one that we valued for years, and we still value the property as being something great for Long Beach and great for the racing community.
So maybe either of you could answer, how do you know when it's time to walk away?
Well, that, you know, I did say earlier, if you're pulling out the contract and haggling over deal points, that trying to reference that, then that's a huge sign. But then, there's other times where you as a brand have different things that you need to focus on. I mean, for example, we have tons of equity in snowboarding over the years, and we've sponsored some backcountry snowboarders. This is a small example, but one that answers the question. When we signed the global partnership with the Olympics, we made the decision that moving forward, that all of our snowboarder athlete sponsorships would be to those who are competing in Olympic events. And we stuck by that, and we had to walk away from a couple partnerships that they still drive Toyota vehicles, and they're still fans of the brand, and we made sure that we ramped down, if you will, that partnership. We didn't just cut it off and walk away, but it was the right thing for the brand, and we made sure that it was a good situation moving forward.
Erik, did you have any thoughts on this?
I did. I would say that I would echo that it is really dependent upon the message, the product, and your goals at that time. Sometimes, for every reason, you want to stay a part of something. For instance, we were in GRC racing in the U.S. For years, and we had to bow out as we transitioned and brought on Genesis brand. So Gen Coupe went away. Hyundai didn't have a performance car in its lineup, so it didn't really make sense. But we recently, in the last year, re-entered into sports racing and have a motorsports program. And actually, we've announced we're going to be in the IMSA series next year because we launched our N brand. So we actually have now a performance brand that will have continued products that will be added to it. But it made sense, right? Timing, the cars, the product, it all kind of aligned, and that's why it made sense to get back into it.
Got one more question before we break. What's the greatest challenge? What aspects of
Money.
this need the greatest?
Need more money.
Need more money? You or the company? No, I'm just kidding. What's like a roadmap and like what's missing? What can anyone do? Or what is anyone seeing in the future, right? Coming down the pipe that will need to be improved in this area. All right, it's perfect.
I think if we knew the answer to that question, we could actually form a business, right? We could do pretty well. No.
Well, and I would say to that, if there was an exact science or an exact way to do this, we would all be doing this exact same thing. So I think that's awesome, actually, because it gives us room to try, it gives us a chance to succeed, and also a little bit of failure and learning. But I think that there will be more of that. I do think also there will be more blurred lines between experiential versus advertising versus sort of your regional, and really because I think you mentioned earlier, you have to do everything. It has to be 360, and it has to be seamless to the consumer. So they don't care that, oh, experiential did this and advertising's doing this. It has to be seamless to them. So I think more blurred lines.
I think you'll see more personalization in the future, but that comes at an expense. That comes at huge trade-offs. So it's really deciding what matters most to your brand and what's going to provide the most return, most RDRs in some cases, right? Supercross, the partnership we've had for over 10 years, and for those first 10 years, we were really pushing the fact that the bike goes in the back of the truck, right? And it works really well, and it's a great truck to take out to wherever you want to go. And people got that, and we did research, and people understood that, so we said, well, what other message can we do? And we really focused on female ridership in motocross. You go to a motocross event, it looks like the only people that ride a motorcycle are men, when in fact there's a large group of female riders in the sport.
Thank you, data.
Yeah, that's right. So moving forward, this last year we did Makeup to Mud, and it was a social campaign that really talked about and showcased different women riders in the motocross sport. And then next year we'll do a Camp Makeup to Mud, where we invite Toyota owners out, where they can get tutorials in improving their ridership, bring friends, have it fully catered, a full-on personalized experience to these group of female Toyota owners. So more things like that, but again, comes with trade-offs and really understanding which should we put our dollars to further personalize these experiences.
Further understanding the consumer. I like it.
Hey Ross, we have one more quick question if you want to take one more. Sorry. One more?
We have time?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're a little over, but one quick question.
Thank you. Ron Hollis, Boulevard Digital. You both mentioned having to change on the fly, and I was wondering if maybe you had an example, top of mind example of a situation where you had to do
I can think of several, unfortunately. But again, that's why we come to the spot. So in the auto show here, you get on site, you have your plan, and you're working sort of in your own sort of vacuum, so to speak. But you get on site and you see that your counterpart next to you has a property in a different location and you need to change. Or in our case last year in working with the NFL, in working on Super Bowl, I should say, our team came up with a new creative ad at the last minute, and it's really important that your message be consistent from television down to the experiential event. So we quickly infused that creative and or tweaked and or completely modified our whole program in certain aspects to make sure that we were in sync.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Auto shows are a great example of making changes quickly and working with a lot of teams really quickly to come to the decision of what that change is going to be. You know, we're experiencing a huge wildfires here in California. We'll be doing matching donations up to $500,000 to American Red Cross in support of California wildfire relief. But that's a really interesting topic. Like, how much do you promote that? The intent is to help the state of California, where we have so much history and we've invested so much, and we recently left with our national headquarters, moving to Texas. So we want to do it for that reason, and we want to promote it in a way that shows that we want to help out the state, but at the same time, we don't want to look like we're a company that's trying to profit off of this huge disaster here. So it's we'll be promoting that through the show, but I expect us to be tweaking how we present that message throughout the show.
Yeah, it's a delicate question, right? And it's a good final thought. I think we have to break though. But thank you guys very much.
Thank
Tyler,
you.
Erik, thank you.
Thank you.
It was fun. Thank you.
Yes, and it's lunchtime.